As the raid on the dungeon kicks off, the whole group starts making fun of Rigo, laughing that he's a bad luck charm, and one guy even jokes he's basically walking around with a flag that says death. Despite having no other option, they had to grab him because they were one person short and Rigo was the only hunter left to help. One by one, the monsters wipe out every hunter until Rigo is the only one left, and instead of panicking, he starts laughing because this is exactly what he was waiting for. Even the monsters are startled by the sheer confidence this guy shows. And to make their pain even worse, Rigo raises all the dead hunters as his zombie army, forcing the very monsters that killed them to fight one another all over again. In a twisted sort of way, he's giving the hunters one last shot at revenge before he passes on, a far cry from when he used to be just a nobody respected. The kind of hunter people would look at and immediately think, yeah, this guy is not surviving the first episode, gets rejected the moment Rigo goes looking for a job. All kinds of jobs are out there for hunters of every rank, from the top A rank down to the bottom F rank, but the moment he asks for work, no one will hire him. Rigo kept begging and saying please, but the person giving the job just shook his head and said no matter how hard he begged, he couldn't give him anything. Yet Rigo won't quit, promising to do anything for just a chance to try. And that's when everyone starts whispering that whenever Rigo steps onto a mission, dungeons crumble, weapons shatter, monsters swarm out of nowhere, and disaster follows him everywhere, earning him the scary nickname Calamity Rigo. Even though everyone knows he's not taken seriously anymore, and the job giver is worried about his building, Rigo begs so hard that the giver finally agrees to one last dangerous task, recovering a dead hunter relic, which makes Rigo's face fall when he sees the job card. Years back, a whole guild tried to grab items left by dead hunters in a dungeon, but the moment they touched them, their powers vanished and everyone died, spreading a scary rumor that anything touched there steals your skills forever. That's why finding old items turned into the least popular job for hunters. Rigo is desperate enough to take the job, even though it's the only work he can do, and as he approaches the cave, he recalls the giver's warning. The relics must go straight to the processing facility because no one, not even the hunters who asked for them, is allowed to touch them. Standing before the cave, Rigo questions if he has truly sunk to the bottom of hunter work by scavenging old treasures, and though he hates this desperate job, he sees others just like him, so he shakes off his doubts and keeps digging through the ruins. After searching for a while, the others started complaining that they couldn't find anything left. Most of the area was buried during the boss fight, so almost all the relics are probably crushed under the rubble. But Rigo keeps going anyway until suddenly a notification pops up showing he gained 1 mana point. Rigo sighs at the low reward, but decides to risk his mana anyway to test the rumors, and instantly awakens a new skill called mediumship. The moment his power kicks in, Rigo is suddenly flooded with visions of the dead, leaving him so confused he wonders if the skill only shows ghosts and means nothing to a hunter like him. This power can't help anyone fight or survive. Instead, it only draws in silent ghosts that slowly tear apart his peace of mind, feeling less like a useful skill and more like a long-winded curse. Yet those quiet spirits make Rigo realize the hunters walking into this dungeon were ready to die from the very beginning. For the first time since gaining this strange power, he feels relief, as the disasters that once plagued him and earned him the nickname Calamity Rigo seem to have vanished, just as a new notification pops up. As mediumship shifts into focus mode, the air around him shifts instantly, and he spots a familiar ghost, the brave B-rank hunter Nakanishi, who died in the dungeon after saving a teammate's child, just as the job giver had told him. Even after he died, no one dared to touch his remains because of the scary curse rumors. Yet that same man now stands before Rigo as a ghost, his body riddled with wounds, refusing to pass on, a sight that makes Rigo admire his bravery for saving his friends without a second thought. But after a moment, Rigo notices something odd. Nakanishi keeps staring at one spot without moving. Rigo follows the gaze and spots the hidden skeleton, realizing Nakanishi was staring at his own remains, which finally makes him understand that mediumship isn't useless, but actually helps him find relics. Even though the situation is still complicated and the relics are surrounded by curse rumors, leaving him with no choice but to move forward. So he slowly reaches down to touch one of the swords near Nakanishi's remains, but nothing happens. No curse, no stolen skills, just nothing at all, making him wonder if the curse was just a rumor all along. But then he spots a small family photo among the old things, and his face suddenly changes. Nakanishi left behind children, and that's likely why his ghost kept watching over his things. Rigo whispers that he did well and could finally rest, but peace is never long for him. Suddenly, a group of hunters spots him and starts making fun, with one claiming he's just scavenging for relics and another whispering about dangerous rumors, until a girl finally recognizes him. When Calamity Rigo mentions that name and tries to run away to avoid disaster, a fearless guy instead snatches the sword she found, arguing that monsters deserve the weapon far more than she does. The moment he realizes it's a relic, the man panics and tosses the sword aside like it's burning, then explodes in anger at Rigo for touching cursed items, calling him a grave robber who survives off the dead, and even mocks Rigo's late brother for supposedly dying in a low-level dungeon, which snaps Rigo into defending his family until the man kicks over relics, insults Rigo as worthless trash, and cruelly tells him to disappear from the world forever. As the other hunters mock the dead, Rigo snaps when they kick the fallen's relics, his rage summoning a terrifying pressure that makes the surrounding ghosts react to his fury. Suddenly, a notification pops up to reveal that Hunter Nakanishi's ghost has taken over the gear, awakening a brand new power inside Rigo that leaves the mocking man before him too shocked to speak as he stares in terror at the crushing pressure from someone he thought was just a regular hunter. Something is clearly wrong, so his friends immediately grab him and drag him away, and once they're gone, the heavy pressure around Rigo lifts, leaving him alone in front of Nakanishi's big house. Rigo quietly realizes he never expected Nakanishi to live in such a nice place. So instead of sending all the recovered relics straight to the disposal site, as the Hunter Association ordered, he decides to personally return them to Nakanishi's family, remembering that no matter how many items hunters loot, their families always want them to come home at least once. As he stands there, a voice calls out from the house, and a little girl rushes forward to cry because the relics he found in the dungeon belonged to her missing father. And honestly, that pain alone was enough to break her heart. But then an older man stormed out of the house, and without a second thought, he slapped the items right out of the little girl's hands, yelling that both the relics and Rigo were disgusting and demanding to know how Rigo dared bring such cursed things back into their home. The old man is absolutely raging with anger. He even starts hitting Rigo while shouting that he'll sue him for breaking the Hunter Association rules. Then he insists his son couldn't be dead because he was a brave hunter, and then he drops a shock Rigo never expected. He asks if his son's death was somehow Rigo's fault. He claims Rigo must have set it up, while the rest of the family cries in the background, making the whole scene even harder to watch, and Rigo frantically tries to say he never even knew Nakanishi. Then he accidentally brings up Nakanishi's ghost, which only makes the family think he's making up crazy excuses to get out of his duties. The old man snaps into a rage, threatening Rigo with his powerful connections to the Hunter Association to ensure he never joins another guild, then suddenly demands that someone inside the house bring out salt, which instantly makes Rigo realize his mistake in returning the items personally. So he quietly prays an apology to Nakanishi before turning to leave, only for something strange to happen as an eerie aura suddenly begins flowing from the relics. Rigo spins around in shock and shouts Nakanishi's name just as another notification flashes up. With the mediumship focus mode turning on, Nakanishi's ghost pops right back into view. Rigo apologizes again, admitting he couldn't get him home safely and wondering if that's why he came back. Then Rigo opens up a bit, admitting that maybe he was just letting his own feelings drive him. He mentions having an older brother whom everyone says is dead, yet not even a single item of his has ever been found, and Rigo believes that just one thing would have been enough to bring him home. But then he looks down and admits it might just be an excuse for going too far, and as he stands quietly, flashes of his past suddenly appear before us. The news reports are calling for a legend, the mighty S-rank hunter Yugo Korisado, to be mourned as he has fallen. While people whispered that Rigo was a jinx and that disaster always followed him, even his own mother finally told him she was tired of all the trouble he brought. When he hears those words again, it shatters him right down to his core. Rigo quietly asks Nakanishi a painful question. Has he seen his brother in the world of the dead? Nakanishi doesn't speak. Instead, he just closes his eyes and lets a small smile take over his face. And strangely, the quiet silence hurts him even more, so he finally admits what he's been holding in for a long time. Maybe he just isn't cut out to be a hunter, because he still can't accept his brother's death since there is no proof he ever died, no relics, no remains, and nothing at all. Rigo took up hunting just to find his brother, but his strange gift of mediumship limits where he can go, turning him into a burden even for guilds, and after everything, he fears he might never find a brother who was strong, respected, and surrounded by people unlike him. No matter where Rigo goes, he is always alone, until Nakanishi gently touches his shoulder and shakes his head as if to say, "That's not true," or "Come with me," before Nakanishi suddenly melts in a glowing energy. The swirling energy twists into a giant, unnatural portal that leaves Rigo shocked, and before he can figure out why Nakanishi brought him there, a violent pull drags him inside to land in a creepy, ancient underground place where a masked figure watches him curiously, forcing him to desperately search for an exit, because if he gets trapped with his current abilities, he's done for. But just as he spots a possible way out, a huge monster bursts through, followed by a notification popping up. Boss Shadow Flame has appeared, and Rigo instantly knows he's doomed because this isn't a normal dungeon, but a deadly quest gate where the only way out is to defeat the boss, a terrifying buffalo-like monster that starts trampling him through the ruins like a football while Rigo runs for his life, mentally giving up and admitting he has no skills or courage to win, until he spots Nakani's sword he accidentally brought with him and receives a dangerous offer to use all his mana points to survive. Something any sensible person would refuse, but which Rigo considers since he's already ready to die. So if spending every last drop of his magic is the only way to save the relic, he will do it, and his whole body begins to move. Suddenly, notifications pop up one by one. Mediumship reaches level 2, and spending all the mana unlocks a secret ghost skill called Friendship, which immediately summons a confused figure who stares at Rigo in disbelief, asking what he is, before realizing Rigo isn't Nakanishi, and confirming this is a totally different ghost. The figure looks down at Rigo, who's barely hanging on, and casually wonders why he's so lazy just as he's about to die, noting that getting roasted by a ghost while fighting for your life is honestly a whole new level of disrespect. A shadowy stranger mocks Rigo for being a hopeless loser, then points out his sword and asks why he doesn't just use it to fight, leaving Rigo crying because he believes he is too broken to wield it and that his only hope is to die before he spreads more hate. Then, the mysterious woman suddenly falls silent as Rigo's words bring back the painful memories of how she was blamed and judged by everyone, even though she had risked her life to protect them. They called her a witch and said she was pulling everyone's strings. In the end, they didn't thank her. Instead, they killed her in the most terrifying way they could think of, just to make sure she never came back. Seeing Rigo broken and hopeless actually angers her, because he looks exactly like the weak, hated version of herself she despises. So she snaps at him for accepting a life of loneliness and crime while telling him that even though he's alive, his mind is already lost, just like hers was when she was falsely called a traitor and burned alive, which makes watching him suffer feel like a second humiliation for her. And while it truly makes her sick to see him like this, she refuses to let him quit because she sees her own struggle in him. So she orders him to grab his sword, drag himself through the mud if he must, and hold on to life no matter how hopeless it seems, before giving him one last command. The mysterious woman forces the pathetic loser to fight by grabbing the sword and swinging it at the monster just before it crushes him, which makes her feel satisfied enough to call it the way a real human should act. Then, as a small kindness to someone who carries the same regrets she once had, she gives him just a little of her power. Even then, Rigo is so confused he can't stop wondering just who this woman is. But before he can think another thought, the cracked sword suddenly bursts with a brilliant light that instantly shifts the whole air around them. Once the link is complete, the woman urgently tells Rigo to keep his own head and not let her fully take control, reminding him that since he triggered the secret power himself, he has what it takes to hold his ground. She snaps him back to reality, declaring that this is his battle, and he needs to stand tall and prove to that huge buffalo who truly runs the show. And finally, she drops her name, declaring herself the Warrior of Oracles, Joan of Arc. Just as another notification pops up, Joan of Arc's spirit possessed the Shattered Blade, and just as Rigo expected a legendary hero to announce herself in a dungeon, his tiny, battered form rose up to face the monster, causing the beast to tremble, while his sword swelled with power until even the boss looked scared, all while Rigo's mind drifted back to his brother from 2 years ago. Even though Rigo kept calling himself worthless, his brother never laughed at him, but instead encouraged him to keep trying to become a hunter, telling him not to be so mean to himself, because he thought Rigo was way more amazing than he realized, something that felt almost impossible to believe coming from an S-rank hunter, but was truly meant, as he explained that while strength and talent are important, Rigo had something much rarer. Remembering that his brother saw his unique ability to feel the pain and sorrow of others as a rare gift, Rigo tightens his grip on his sword and stands ready to face the buffalo boss. Even Joan of Arc starts looking interested in what this tiny kid can do. Then the buffalo monster charges straight at him. This time, Rigo doesn't run. He swings his sword with all his might. The sword suddenly erupts into a blazing tornado that slashes toward the boss because Joan's link to Hellfire is making it overflow with flames, giving Rigo a rare sliver of hope. But the boss instantly responds by vomiting a beam so huge it's basically a dragon-sized Kamehameha fired straight from its mouth. Rigo quickly raises a shield to block the attack, but the sword strangely sucks the fire right into itself like a cursed vacuum before the power suddenly vanishes, leaving him to run for his life through a dungeon turned into a giant barbecue, while Joan laughs, noting he can't use the sword's full strength because it isn't his real weapon and his own sword is nowhere to be found. Then she casually asks what he plans to do next, while Rigo, acting like a track star, but facing a fiery death, frantically runs and thinks up a plan to either stop the monster's attacks or keep dodging flames until he finds a chance to strike. But the beast is too fast, closing the gap before he can decide. So he suddenly uses his other skill to bring back the dead hunters as undead soldiers to try again, only for this second attempt to fail just as badly as the first since the intense heat. Makes the undead panic and run away screaming for healing spells until even they threaten to quit, forcing Rigo to promise he'll hold the monster back so they can escape, all while the battle grows more chaotic and he desperately tries to come up with a strategy. But this time, something feels different as he fights alongside the undead hunters, suddenly feeling a strange connection with all the ghosts around him whose emotions, regrets, fears, and unfinished wishes flood his mind, letting him feel every pain they carried before dying until Rigo finally realizes he can see their regrets clearly, instantly reminding him of what his brother once told him. That his true strength lies in his ability to understand other people's feelings. At that moment, everything finally clicks. His true gift isn't just fighting, but hearing the forgotten dead and growing stronger by answering them. So instead of panicking, he calmly commands the spirits to unite against the monster who killed them. Another voice calls out, saying he wants to rescue his friends. One of them just wants to go back home to his family. Then another speaks softly, saying they can't take the pain anymore. All those feelings blend together until they become one huge, unstoppable power. As the sword swells and pulses with power, the dead hunters finally believe they can win if they stand with him. So ghosts surround him to offer their strength and ask for justice, turning Rigo into the vessel for their shared hopes as he swings his glowing blade and charges forward. With the ghost power fueling his fiery blade, Rigo swings so hard that the monster is instantly sliced apart and burned to a crisp. Then a notification pops up announcing the quest is done. The Nushi Jado flame is defeated, and the moment the boss drops, all the ghosts around Rigo burst into cheers. Some are laughing, some are cheering, and others are just glad it's finally over, with the dead hunters even throwing a better victory party than many living teams, until the spirits slowly fade away in peace, free from their curse and ready to move on to the next world. Rigo quietly thanks everyone and lets them go, while Silent Joan watches, admitting she's truly amazed that he united the weak, voiceless ghosts and bound them to the sword, making her realize he might be the one to finally lift her curse before he suddenly runs out of energy and collapses. Before the tension could settle, Joan ruined the mood by taking back her kind words, calling him a pathetic loser, while Rigo laughed bitterly at the relic before they finally placed it respectfully near Nakanishi's home. The little girl steps outside, spots something, and bursts into tears as she thinks of her daddy. While Rigo and Joan secretly watch from the shadows, Rigo suddenly realized the shocking truth that Joan had already escaped with him, freeing him to sell the dungeon rights for a staggering 1,000,000 gold coins, a fortune that made his heart race after years of just trying to survive. Even though Rigo forces himself to look calm so he doesn't embarrass himself, he nervously stares at his account while waiting for the money. And finally, the payment shows up. The second the money hits his account, Rigo's mind races with dreams of buying nice clothes, getting a fresh haircut, and finally eating real food. And honestly, he hasn't felt this happy in years. While a man trained peacefully in a fancy house, his assistant burst in to say that a strange gate had opened in a nearby cemetery, and the monsters inside were so strong they had burned a dungeon boss to ash with power that even top hunters rarely see. They confirmed the being wasn't from another dimension, and while the man desperately asks if the holy relic is still there, the assistant says they can't be sure, which makes the man quietly wonder if someone else got there first. Maybe a thief looking to sell the remains, or another relic user hunting for power. And while he notes that fear kept everyone away from the cursed remains until now, the sudden arrival of another relic user makes things tricky, yet he remains unbothered and casually declares that no matter what this person wants, he won't let them keep the relic, so he'll just kill them and take it back himself, proving he has no idea how humans actually act, while Rigo's situation feels completely different. For the first time in ages, he finally feels truly good, his body light and healthy again, making him wonder when he last felt this alive. Meanwhile, Joan of Arc watches him silently, complaining at first that she's too tired of waiting, but then she too is surprised by the change in Rigo's look and feeling. And honestly, Rigo feels it too, because for the first time he truly wants to get stronger, since he finally gets it. If he grows, maybe he can protect people instead of bringing them disaster. Perhaps he can make up for what's gone and finally find his brother. No matter what, he decides he must grow stronger, so he asks Joan for help, but she instantly rejects him, calling him a crybaby loser until he begs so much that she finally agrees on one condition: find the relic of Fireboy's sword to prove he isn't weak anymore. And the next day, after selling the mining rights, work begins when a dangerous stranger from before shows up and immediately turns things into trouble. The guy casually wipes out the whole crew, then grills the miners about who sold the relics, only to get a blank stare when they admit the seller vanished without giving a real name, which makes him furious and start calling them worthless trash who'd be better off dead. But then his mood flips instantly as a strange energy surrounds him and he analyzes the leftover magic traces, realizing the previous owner was a powerhouse and that this means he could get strong enough to kill even better. So he grins like he found legendary loot while the unsuspecting Rigo just relaxes nearby. We see him happily sipping a frappuccino, calling it legendary and shocked that something so delicious even exists. So after all the poverty and suffering he endured since his brother vanished, he deserves this moment of luxury. But Joan immediately ruins it by telling him they must leave right now. And even though Rigo explains that this isn't tea and reminds her of his hard past, she simply refuses to care. She shouts that they can't waste any time, but Rigo keeps asking about the relic and accidentally calls it the full book, which makes Joan so annoyed she insists it's Fireboy's sword, a powerful spirit trapped in the dungeon who can't use her full strength without it. And just as Rigo gets interested in this amazing weapon, someone nearby hears them. Suddenly, strange eyes pop up everywhere, making the air feel dangerous, but then the same mysterious guy from before shows up right in front of him. At first, he looks confused because the strong, dark force he sensed earlier feels nothing like Rigo's weak appearance, making him wonder if he followed the wrong person and even doubt if this kid really defeated the boss. But after staring at him for a moment, he decides the boy isn't much of a threat. He casually asks for the dungeon's relics, as if borrowing a pen, leaving Rigo stunned and confused since he only took Nakanishi's sword and knows nothing special was inside. But when Rigo claims there were none, the man laughs calmly and threatens that refusing to hand over the relic will only mean he takes it first and kills Rigo anyway. Suddenly, another vicious strike rockets at Rigo, blurring his vision just before a burst of frozen power shatters the ground once more. Joan stops Rigo from panicking and tells him to use his skill to look closely, so he focuses harder and finally sees something terrifying. The man is surrounded by strange auras. A ghost stands beside him, and the sword in his hand is also a dangerous relic that leaves Rigo shaken. The man looked impressed that Rigo figured it out so fast, casually admitted he got the relic recently, and then explained something even worse. The original owner died inside the dungeon before ever finishing their goal. The hunter's eye powers didn't vanish with his death, but instead fused onto the relic, turning into weak but highly useful disposable tools. At that moment, Rigo finally realizes the ghost next to him isn't there by choice, but is being forced and used, yet he is confused because the man beside him doesn't seem able to see ghosts at all. Joan quickly explains that seeing spirits is Rigo's special gift, since the other man can't even see her standing right there. After realizing that, Rigo stares closely at the exhausted and tormented ghost beside the man and feels his stomach drop, while the annoyed man growls for the relic and threatens to take it by force, which snaps Rigo right out of it. He shouts that he can't stand watching someone treat a dead hunter's ghost like trash, so Rigo orders him to let the spirit go right now. But the man just smirks and acts like he has no clue what Rigo is saying. The bad guy smirks and jokes that Rigo's angry face is actually cute, saying he wants to see more of it. Suddenly, he strikes again without any warning. This punch was so much stronger than last time that it forced Rigo to step back and block it, while the other guy just casually said this is only the start. Meanwhile, Rigo is freaking out inside because he knows he needs to grab another weapon right now. After already spending Mr. Nakanishi's folding sword, he spots a tiny nearby knife that looks as threatening as a butter knife, yet he immediately asks Joan to possess it, which instantly offends her because she refuses to wield anything so cheap and vulgar, sounding more insulted by the knife than by the enemy trying to kill them. But Rigo activates mediumship anyway. Since the process had already begun, Joan was dragged into the knife fight against her will, shouting in annoyance that he'd forced her to possess that ugly thing, until she suddenly realized that Rigo had learned how to force possession, and even she hadn't expected the potato boy to pull that off so quickly, while the evil guy, who was loving the chaos, admitted Rigo was good at teasing him but declared he was done waiting around. Rigo tries to charge again, but instead of getting blown away, he sprints straight at the attacker, who blocks the hit and thinks the kid with potato-headed hair is actually pretty good, only to send him flying back with a sharp counter. Noticing his relic sword is broken, so he casually tosses it aside and claims he doesn't need it anymore. Just as Rigo feels a massive new energy gathering, and the man cheers about the perfect timing while pulling out another relic, swapping cursed weapons. faster than anyone changes their phone wallpaper. He grumbles that the last relic wasn't cute enough, so he's already running off to find the next one. Then he unleashes the dark magic of raising the dead, and while the trapped spirit screams in agony for freedom, the guy just turns a blind eye. Seeing this makes Rigo furious, so massive chains wrapped in a glowing pink aura blast toward him and slam straight into the knife Joan is holding. Even the bad guy stops for a moment to call the whole scene incredibly tacky, and Joan likely agrees. So he tosses that old relic in the trash like it's garbage and declares he doesn't need it anymore, only to pull out a wand next and decide that maybe this one will be more fun. The next strike zooms at Rigo, so fast he can't see it, looping through the sky in wild turns before it hits. Leaving him so confused he asks what on earth he just fought. The villain boasts that he has found the perfect weapon to torture Rigo and demands the relic from Rigo's dungeon, while Rigo watches in horror as the man cruelly discards and abuses the suffering ghosts trapped inside them without a care in the world. At this moment, the whole place is crowded with miserable ghosts in agony, and Rigo looks him straight in the eye to ask if he truly cannot see their suffering, warning that he is desecrating relics filled with deep sorrow and pain, words that surprisingly shake the evil man by reminding him of a past teammate who once asked the same thing. For the first time, his face shifts just a little, and right then Rigo strikes, only to have a newcomer suddenly jump into the fight and introduce himself as Argio, who casually asks for Rigo's name even while Rigo is barely dodging flying attacks that look like they'll turn him into Swiss cheese, until he finally shouts back, "Rigo Corzado." The moment Argio hears that last name, his face shifts instantly, and then he admits he knew it. When Rigo heard his brother Yugo's name, he was so shocked he asked Argio if he really knew him. Argio looks a bit taken aback by the question, noting that Rigo didn't just know him. Yugo was his guild leader, who also tried to kill him. When Rigo hears the news, he freezes in shock while Argio looks strangely thrilled, describing his past battles as pure joy and speaking of life-or-death moments like casual vacation stories, until a new arrow flies in and suddenly everything slows down for Rigo, letting him dodge easily, while Argio still runs around the battlefield like a wild maniac. Rigo honestly has no clue why everything suddenly seems to move in slow motion. But before he could even think about it, Argio suddenly appeared right in front of him and punched him straight in the face, sending him flying backward. As Rigo struggled to stand up, Argio looked confused and said it felt strange because something seemed to slow him down for a second, making him wonder if that was Rigo's doing, while Joan immediately started complaining. She insists that the slowing power comes from her own skill, not from Rigo. She teases him for not dodging the punch, explaining that Rigo's low-grade weapon forces her to let Argio keep moving, just like the Shadow Clamp skill, but she warns him not to get comfortable because Argio is attacking again. As another arrow screams toward him, blazing with energy, Rigo barely dodges it again, while Joan explains that she can't freeze Argio in place, but she can slow him down just enough to slip through the attack. And now that Argio is grinning, he admits he doesn't understand the strange power, but thinks this potato-headed kid is surprisingly impressive. Now that all he cares about is his brother, Rigo demands to know what happened to Yugo while fighting, only to hear from Argio that Yugo simply abandoned his team and ran away after their last encounter, which makes Rigo instantly furious, just as another arrow suddenly flies at him. Argio thinks he's won, but Rigo barely dodges and blocks the attack with Joan's small knife, then angrily insists his brother wouldn't betray his team, while Argio just shrugs and says he's telling the truth. He insists that the guild report settles the matter once and for all. While more suffering ghosts start to appear around Argio notices the arrow's strange magic fading, meaning Rigo finally freed the trapped ghost, and though Argio admits he might have underestimated Rigo for a split second, he immediately swings a punch right at his face, leaving Joan shocked since she thought she had slowed him down. But Argio soon sees the trick and understands how it works. He quickly learns the power only hampers his speed for a moment, so instead of panicking, he simply pushes even harder and starts accelerating like crazy, leaving Rigo behind in a panic and wondering if these hunters are truly monstrous, while Argio casually grabs the broken arrow relic and tells it that since it got outsmarted by Potato Boy, it's officially fired. Then, without a second thought, he breaks the relic in half, and the instant it shatters, the trapped ghost lets out a screaming cry of pain, begging to finally be free. Rigo stares at the suffering ghost and yells at Argio to realize how much it hurts, but Argio simply doesn't care. Instead, he charges into another assault as flames erupt across the field, while Rigo readies a counter-move and Joan snaps her bonds back on to make Argio feel heavy and slow, a change he instantly notices and complains about. This time, Rigo doesn't hold back. Burning with anger, he unleashes everything at once and finally hits Argio right on, and to his shock, actually hurts. Even as flames erupt all around, Argio doesn't stop moving, driven only by some wild instinct, and charges in again to punch Rigo, but this time Rigo drops low and slips out of the way, just in time. While clutching the possessed knife, Rigo gives a signal to Joan, who groans at being ordered around before she activates her bondage power to slow Argio down one last time. Argio suddenly notices the knife and laughs, admitting that Rigo is becoming interesting because he managed to bleed Argio just like his brother once did. So instead of fighting personally, Argio leaves the battle to his guards and walks away to reveal a terrifying truth. Rigo didn't steal the holy relic containing Moscato's location by accident, but Argio intentionally let him take it because he knew Rigo was obsessed with learning about his brother. He set a clever trap with fake clues to lure Rigo, who walked right into it. Yet Argio isn't angry, only curious because Rigo's strange ability makes him wonder what unseen thing Rigo can actually see. Now he plans to let Rigo touch Moscato's relic and see what happens. While in a quiet alleyway, Rigo stands completely exhausted after barely escaping Argio. And then Joan is back at it, mocking him for only landing one real hit during the whole fight. Surprisingly, Rigo still looks happy, admitting he had no choice but to run, but he's glad he managed to free one of the suffering ghosts. For Rigo, that realization alone is everything. And when Joan asks if he finally gets the huge gap in power between him and Argio, he admits it right away, saying that without Joan's skill to slow Argio down, he would have died instantly. Joan then casually explained that she could only do so much because she was forced to use such cheap, low-quality weapons. Honestly, she hasn't moved on from the butter knife incident, and while Rigo claims finding the Fireboy sword will unleash her full power, she quickly corrects him, now convinced he's messing with the name on purpose. Yet he suddenly admits that despite never asking about his brother or running from the clue about Yugo, he's actually excited because for the first time he believes he can truly get stronger as a hunter, which he explains will only happen if they find that specific sword, even. Though Joan immediately interrupts to remind him once more that it is Fireboy's sword, not hers. Then she asks him if he has any plan, since there are so many dungeons, but he confidently shows the mysterious book he stole that holds clues to his brother and might lead them to the Joan sword. So the scene shifts to gate serial 8886, known as Monty Hall. There, a staff member questions a suspicious stranger about his missing hunter license, but when he casually introduces himself as Tanaka instead of his real name, Rigo, the group gets confused and even jokes about his new identity, so he keeps bluffing and promises to bring his license later, only for the crew to debate checking the server until someone points out there's no internet, forcing them to use an aura crystal that makes Rigo immediately come up with another excuse. He explains that aura acts like a hunter's fuel for power and stamina, meaning a stronger aura unlocks better abilities and allows the use of expensive skills that weaker hunters can't handle. So when the staff finally checks Rigo's level, the receptionist scoffs at the idea he could meet the C rank requirement needed for the dungeon. While a coworker notes that low-rank hunters often sneak into tougher dungeons just to boost their reputation. Most of them just end up as nameless bodies, which honestly just means more paperwork for the officials. The receptionist insists they just finish reading, warning that if Rigo's aura is too weak, they'll throw him out next. So he quietly taps in a mediumship and unleashes all his aura at once. The staff member tells him to stay still as the measurement starts, while Rigo secretly hopes that Joan's aura merging with his through mediumship will push his rank up to C. Then the machine beeps, the staff instantly goes silent, the system glitches out instead of showing a rank, and suddenly an error message pops up. As the staff panics over the broken machine, Rigo feigns innocence while secretly gloating about his own trickery, only for a weary worker to secretly agree to let it slide if Rigo stays quiet. But then one of them whispers that they might all die in the dungeon before they can even file the paperwork, just as someone else realizes the scanner isn't broken, but overwhelmed by a terrifyingly powerful aura. Later, while the raid group gathers, Rigo waits quietly nearby until Joan suddenly asks why he's been hiding his face, calling his style points lame before he snaps back by saying she talks too much, then explains that he used a fake name because if anyone knew he was Calamity Rigo, no one would let him join the raid, admitting he's basically speed-running identity fraud, before reminding her he's looking for her sword and clues about his brother, only for her to instantly correct him again and tell him it's Fireboy's sword, not his, and to stop searching just because he feels like it, calling him an idiot. Still, Joan admits she doubts her beloved sword is really in this dungeon, but Rigo reminds her that she saw the mysterious notebook too, and its pages reveal that this low-level dungeon has a terrible reputation for strange incidents and an undefeated boss, meaning something powerful is definitely hiding here, and if there's even a tiny chance they can find clues about his brother or the Fireboy sword, they must search every corner carefully because Rigo already feels that something about This place is very wrong. Suddenly, the raid leader steps up, introduces himself as Fukuyama, and reassures the group that despite the scary rumors, this dungeon is officially just a beer rank challenge they can crush for fame and loot, especially since there's a big bonus for landing the final blow, which makes the hunters instantly forget all sense, while Rigo quietly watches the excited crowd until he spots something terrible. One of the same guys who made fun of him before is in this raid group, and the second Rigo spots him, he ducks his head lower to hide, which makes Joan ask what's bothering him. Rigo realizes those are the same men who shattered Mr. Nakanishi's sword and challenged him right before he met Joan, and the memory instantly shifts his mood. Joan asks him what the trouble is and jokes about him being afraid of them. Rigo whispers an unexpected truth, admitting he must stay in control because he was powerless to stop them back then. But now he's scared that he might accidentally hurt them instead. Joan bursts out laughing at the shocking thought of Potato Boy saying dangerous things, while Rigo secretly admits he's finally excited about the raid, though he just hopes those fools don't spot him before he climbs down the rope ladder into the dark, liquid-filled dungeon. The whole place feels truly gross, with darkness filling every corner. The air feels thick and wrong before Rigo even tries to use his gift. After spending so long fighting cursed things, he knows this place is wrong and not just the spirit of a hunter who died in a raid. Something far worse is hiding here. But before he can think more, a girl yells at the baggage handler to hurry up, which startles Rigo because he forgot he's undercover. The girl asks why he froze when he stepped into the dungeon and wonders if this is his first time facing a beer rank dungeon. Rigo nervously admits it's true, and the girl teases him about looking scared while warning that if he can't keep up, he'll get lost in the dungeon forever. So he quickly agrees and secretly panics inside, knowing he must act innocent and pretend he's just a new baggage handler so no one catches him looking for his own clues. The girl tells Rigo it's okay if he lingers at the back and just trails along, explaining that this is a perfect chance for him to watch skilled hunters work safely from behind since the main team has plenty of strong warriors at the front, though she has no clue that the nervous baggage handler beside her is the same guy who fought a crazy relic collector just 2 days ago. So Rigo awkwardly thanks her, asks for her name, and she introduces herself as Lisa and suggests he can just call her that instead of Senior, since it sounds too stiff. Rigo quickly answers Miss Lisa, but Joan immediately starts criticizing him for acting so polite to someone stronger, and then Lisa suddenly notices a strange smell on him that even Rigo can't quite identify anymore. Just as the guild leader cheers that the baggage handler has arrived and the raid can finally start, the group dives deeper into the dungeon, only for Rigo to realize the same annoying idiots from before are there too, though luckily no one knows who he is yet, and after he orders everyone to hurry, he suddenly stops so hard that the people behind him nearly crash into him. One of the hunters suddenly shouts, demanding to know why he stopped out of nowhere. The leader whispers a chilling question, is that actually a human? As the group stares into the darkness at a horrifying figure that looks like a bandaged mummy rather than a human, panic spreads until their leader orders them into formation and reveals that the creature endlessly regenerates, and its poisonous bandages make even a small scratch fatal, forcing them to fight with calm precision that shows they are on a completely different level than the random guilds he has faced before. Everyone immediately knows what they need to do and works together smoothly. The leader quickly explains that the monster instinctively targets whoever has the strongest aura, which meant it should have focused on Fukuyama, but instead, it completely ignored him and charged straight at Rigo, leaving everyone shocked as the beast seemed to think the baggage handler looked suspicious. So Rigo panicked and called out to Joan for help, who used her powers to slow the attack just enough for him to dodge, though the impact still sent him crashing into the strange liquid below, making the other hunters think he was destroyed. One even claims the poor guy was taken out instantly, but after a moment, Rigo slowly surfaces alive since he dodged most of the attack, leaving the others surprised and asking if he's okay, while another hunter casually suggests he just got lucky, causing Fukuyama to immediately refocus on the monster, in order to use his skill to reveal the mummy's weak points. So activates a skill called tomograph that creates a glowing circle on the ground to scan the mummy's entire body with light. The skill shows where the enemy is weak, but as the scan spreads, Tidu sees the vital points inside the mummy's body moving around, and even Fukuyama admits he can see them shifting. Realizing they can't wait any longer, Fukuyama decides to use his powerful homing fire attack meant for the dungeon boss instead, unleashing a roaring blast that the monster quickly dodges, leaving Rigo surprised and thinking Fukuyama missed his shot. Suddenly, the flames twist to chase the mummy like a hungry pet, slamming into it again, and until the whole thing is burned up, while one guy cheers Fukuyama on, and a worried woman notices he's already tired and warns him that he can only use that dangerous power 3 times total before running out. forcing him to admit he had no choice but to save the boss for later since Rigo would have died if he hadn't stepped in. Right as Joan points out that the monster ignored everyone to hunt Rigo alone, maybe sensing his strange aura, which makes Rigo panic that fighting back would reveal his secret identity, while Joan laughs that it would at least prove he's the stinky one. Rigo instantly takes offense and starts arguing back, insisting that he isn't stinky. Suddenly, the talk turns into him shouting about a stinky disaster like he's losing a fight against a ghost middle schooler. But then the air goes cold as Rigo spots movement everywhere and more monsters burst into the dark, trapping the raid team in danger while Fukuyama and the others realize things have just gone from bad to terrifying. Meanwhile, Joan just laughs and jokes that Calamity Rigo always brings disaster his way, which only makes his stress pile up even higher. Now he's panicking as he stares at the huge crowd of monsters closing in from everywhere, realizing they're completely surrounded and that even after using one of his strongest skills, they couldn't handle just one earlier. And now there are 16 of them. Far more than a raid team can beat since only 4 hunters in the whole guild can properly fight a monster of this level. So Fukuyama instantly turns to her and orders her to find the enemy's weak spots again. But 2 warns him that using her tomograph on such a large scale will drain her aura almost completely. Even though she hesitated, she still activates the skill, causing a scan to sweep across the whole battlefield and light up every mummy, so their weak spots are clear, and the moment it finishes, Fukuyama orders everyone to give it their all before the effect fades. And just like that, the whole raid team dives in as some hunters sprint forward with blades while others shoot arrows from afar. As everyone frantically throws everything at the monsters while Rigo freezes in shock, a former bully jumps in to defend him without knowing his true identity, then scolds Rigo for doing nothing and orders the baggage handler to finally help the team before chaos erupts when another hunter gets savagely maimed by a mummy, causing the healer to panic and ignore the screaming victim's plea for help because she's already busy with someone else, and unfortunately, the dungeon doesn't care about anyone's schedule. Before the healer can even recover, another wave of attacks smashes through the battlefield, sending hunters tumbling one by one against the relentless mummies. Rigo watches everything unfold until he realizes he can't stay back, even as Joan warns him that revealing his identity was the very problem they feared. But he insists he can't hold back now, and then a horrifying thought strikes him. The sudden swarm of mummies might not be bad luck at all, but a direct result of his own overwhelming aura, while Joan quietly wonders if he still doesn't grasp the truth. That his calamity has moved beyond mere superstition and is now tied directly to how strange his aura has become. Suddenly, the mummies nearby all spot Rigo at once and leap toward him. Lisa screams a warning to the baggage handler, but the second a mummy grabs Rigo's bag, the creature is suddenly engulfed in flames and vanishes instantly thanks to Rigo's counterattack. Lisa just freezes in pure shock. She stares in shock that the mummy vanished with one blow and can't stop wondering what she just saw. Even Joan looks impressed now, admitting that Rigo has finally mastered his skill and reluctantly giving him credit, while the other hunters stare in disbelief at how the baggage handler they dismissed as useless just erased a monster instantly while they struggled. And as Fukuyama watches, he quietly realizes that once they entered the dungeon, Rigo became part of the fight, leaving the hunters to flail against the mummy swarm while the very guy who protected Rigo earlier stand around, confused, trying to make sense of the chaos. Then Rigo slowly pulls out his weapon, looks around at the hunters, and quietly drops a surprising truth. They are all his teammates, and as soon as he speaks, flames ignite on his weapon with a completely new and different power. Joan spots it right away and wonders if Rigo got stronger after their last fight, but she soon realizes the real reason. His fierce need to keep everyone safe is pushing his power far beyond what it should be. By now, Rigo's energy has doubled, and Joan's own power has wrapped around it like a second layer. The combined energy suddenly erupts upward, growing faster and faster with every passing moment. Now Joan sounds like she really cares, while Rigo finally shouts his true heart out, promising to save everyone from this disaster because if anyone dies because of him, he will blame himself forever. Honestly, seeing Calamity Rigo fight to save everyone instead of leaving them breaks the heart. So he grips his weapon, yells for Joan to move, and she complains she has no choice before reigniting her flames, making him burn even hotter while mummies charge from all sides, and he finally steps onto the battlefield with deadly fire. Suddenly, he vanishes into the chaos, moving at blinding speed through the slowed-down world to slice mummies apart with his blazing blade, always appearing first to cut down any hunter who gets attacked, turning the fight into a nightmare for the undead. Because the world around him moves in slow motion, Rigo glides through the area with almost no effort. Meanwhile, Joan stares in shock as Rigo's overwhelming power reveals that controlling such aura to stop every enemy at once is simply impossible. But right now, even Fukuyama is being dragged down by the effect, so he's desperately wasting his big moves for the final boss while his body suddenly slows to a crawl before everything snaps back to normal speed in an instant. The hunters spun around in a confused blur, their slow movements leaving them completely baffled by what just happened as they missed every step of Rigo's hidden moves until Fukuyama finally spotted the key clue. The mummies are still alive. One girl immediately warns him to be careful. Then Fukuyama, Lisa, and the others quickly finish off the damaged mummies together, leaving everyone confused since they can't figure out that Rigo was the one who weakened them, with some hunters claiming their enemies vanished in flames while others ask if Fukuyama used a secret skill, only for him and the others to deny it, as he admits he was already at his limit and thought someone else like Akai or Teru must have done it, while one girl remains in shock, genuinely believing she was about to die. After Fukuyama whispers that everyone surviving is a miracle, the group feels a huge weight lift off their shoulders as long as no one died, while Rigo quietly smiles in relief before his own guilt starts creeping back in, making him blame himself for almost ruining the whole raid until Joan steps in to stop him, explaining that he's wrong because no one is a disaster magnet. The mummies simply followed his powerful presence, and for the first time, Rigo truly begins to consider that she might be right. Lisa watches him from afar, fully convinced the baggage handler vanished during the battle because he moved so fast she couldn't even follow him. Now she can't stop wondering who this guy really is. After barely escaping the battle, the tired hunters finally take a short break, and one quietly points out the obvious. This dungeon has changed, so she asks Fukuyama to retreat, but he refuses because they're trapped here until the boss falls, and since they lack an escape item, he decides to send out a distress signal for backup instead. Suddenly, the device starts beeping strangely, causing Rigo to freeze and admit they can't contact HQ, which sends panic through the group as hunters scream that they are trapped in a dungeon they thought was easy, while Lisa tries to calm them down by reminding everyone they survived the last fight, until one hunter interrupts with a confused realization that their raid party was supposed to have only 14 members, not 15. She whispered that she counted 15, and Joan was shocked to realize Lisa could somehow sense her presence. Just as Lisa finishes counting, a terrifying giant monster with a human face leaps out, and she screams while everyone warns that its grip means death, for it lays eggs inside its victims to turn them into food, but the creature's creepy laugh announces Lord Mosquito, a name that suddenly makes Rigo freeze because it links the stolen notebook's holy relic to a terrifying fate. But before anyone could even respond, the spider spun around and bolted deeper into the dungeon. Fukuyama shouts for everyone to chase the spider, but Teru stops him in his tracks and points out a terrifying truth. They're being followed. At first, only distant, echoing noises fill the dungeon. But soon Fukuyama realizes the sound belongs to a horde of bloody mummies returning, forcing the group to follow the spider as their only way out. As they rush deeper, Rigo can't stop thinking about the name Mosquito and how it might finally lead them to a holy relic inside Argio's notebook, while Joan looks around the gloomy, miserable place with a heavy feeling in her heart. She can't believe a masterpiece could exist in such a bleak place. Yet Rigo sounds surprisingly hopeful, claiming his safe journey to the relic feels like a miraculous stroke of luck before the group steps deeper into the darkness. The whole group trails the spider-faced human deeper into the dark dungeon, and the air just gets worse the farther they go. While Lisa walks quietly with the group, she worries that chasing that monster is a terrible idea because it will surely lead them right into another huge fight. Now she knows this dungeon is way too hard and wishes she never joined the raid. But she notices Rigo looks suddenly much stronger after the mummy fight, so she secretly uses her sneaky skill, melancholy, to fake a leg injury and manipulate his emotions into caring for her, even though he gets worried and kneels down to bandage her wound, leaving her shocked by how incredibly kind he really is. Honestly, she's never seen melancholy work this effectively on someone before. Then Rigo goes even further and says she probably won't be able to walk properly with that injury, so he'll carry her on his back instead. And just like that, Rigo starts carrying her.